Hey, it's News from Heaven. Today on the show, being spontaneous lets God in. Doesn't sound like a spiritual sort of thing, to not be grasping for stuff, to not be rigidly trying to control things. Isn't there something about in-the-momentness, spontaneity that seems culturally like it's connected to spirituality or the right path? But what is the nature of that connection? And what we're going to be looking at in here is potentially a very specific toggle of not just how to get in a good mindset, but what allows things to happen or not happen. Very tangibly with certain spirits around Emanuel Swedenborg, but maybe with you and I in our lives too. What we're going to do today is see if we can't get advice on how to manage the condition that I call, what I would say is a condition, which is having a human mind. If you've ever had one, you know they're a little hard to get a handle on. They seem to be this mix of helpful, useful, positive things and needlessly destructive, disruptive, repetitive, fear-inducing, uncontrollable things. And these two sort of clash, and it leaves me wondering, how do I get in the flow? It seems like there is some kind of flow you could get into where you would get better thought service. Everything in our life we look to optimize. If you're having trouble organizing your life, you get Marie Kondo to come in and she says, this is how you approach that. And then you know going forward. If your company has a problem with its internal IT systems, you get a consultant who smooths that out. Can we get a little spiritual consulting here? From Swedenborg. This is from Journal of Spiritual Experiences. Dive deep into that thing to number 1628. Who knows what's going to happen in this episode? Let's be spontaneous. Certain spirits Swedenborg's hanging out with, out of an ingrained curiosity. Spirits are always curious. Spirits are just people. People are curious. Spirits even more so. Were eager to learn still more of the matters revealed to me, but they had found out that if they longed to learn them, they were not allowed to. Our scene is set. We've got Swedenborg, and Swedenborg will symbolize him this time by his initials. Swedenborg is always surrounded by spirits, and actually, we are too. That's the mechanism of consciousness. But Swedenborg is aware of his association, and the spirits are more aware of their association with him because of his state. So he has got these spirits around him, but also he's talking about the matters revealed to me. That Swedenborg, even as he goes, and yes, part of why he has this remarkable experience that makes us do this show where we dive into his journal of spiritual experiences. A lot of people's journals are nice, but we wouldn't go diving in to make a show. So Swedenborg is giving us insight into a layer of life that we're all participating in, but not aware of. So he's not only got something going on because he understands the nature of the spiritual neighborhood, but also there's this stream of high-end information being revealed to Swedenborg. And so much so that these spirits, even though they're already spirits, they already know that there's such a thing as spirits. They want to know, wait, what are you getting here? What do you know here? But these spirits have a problem, which is as they're striving to penetrate into the knowledge being dispensed here, as that ramps up, they find themselves blocked, that they're not able to get in and look at if they long to learn them, they were not allowed to. So something about their very act of curiosity is keeping them out of this knowledge base. For this reason, in order to learn that they were trying to keep in order to learn them, they were trying to keep thinking that they did not want to know them. So they're seeing that this is some kind of spiritual mechanism or some kind of law that they can tell, oh man, my striving to have this, my will to have this is keeping me from being able to have it. I know what I'll do. I will try to, don't think of a bear. I will not think of a bear. I will think, I don't want to know this stuff. I don't want to know this stuff as I'm creeping over to try to know this stuff. So they see a system and they're trying to game the system, and they know it has to do with somehow their intent in the spiritual world. Your intent is visible. and it is directly affects what's around you. Here, you can have any kind of intent. You can go into a room with a bunch of people, and you don't know what anyone's really trying to do. But there, it's obvious. But they're trying to game the intent and say, well, okay, I'll change. I don't really want to know this, even though I do, but I'm going to make it seem like I don't because I'm going to think about it. Can that get me in? Let's see if they're successful. They have ingenuity, right? They kept trying to think that they did not want to know them. This attempt was at once perceived, because you can't. Spiritual world is the world of intention. So that's like saying, someone's looking at me, but I'm going to try to creep along and hope they don't notice that I'm moving. And they were told in this way they would not come to know them, because they were using trickery by pretending not to want to know, as they were well aware. No, like you can't do that. You can't fake it to make it. The spirits affirm this. They're like, yeah, this is not working. This is what a curious, weird story we find ourselves in so far. What is this possibly teaching? What? And it doesn't seem like why are they not given what they want? Why? It's just a curious, quaint little situation. What's it going to teach us? The spirits affirm this, saying they are trying in this way to find out more. And here's where we start to get to our teachable moment here. So I told them that they should not do this, but should be, and here we'll get like, ooh, it's going to get a little zen here, should be without desire. And it would then be left, so no desire, what does that do? It would then be left to the Lord to give in his good pleasure. So there's some kind of split here between the urging of self and the good pleasure of the Lord. That there is a root, there is a goal, and there's two routes to get there. One is this striving that the spirits are engaged in, and the other is the good pleasure of the Lord. Actually, we should differentiate by color the roots, because I got a feeling, and we're already having one of them held up as the right way to go, and the other one as problematic. So we'll see, that's where we're trying to get. It's that nice green field there that we see as our goal. So it's a strange dichotomy. Okay, so there's this thing here, and I can try to get it, or I can wait and see if the Lord is going to give it. How is this one better than this one? This they did attempt, but they were trying to do so from their own power, which was still an artifice and their own endeavor or will, as they also affirmed, because this was plainly visible by a spiritual mental image. So even then, they say, okay, we've got to leave this to the Lord. And remember, this is high-end knowledge that even these spirits didn't have before. Swedenborg, this is what they were part of what they were trying to find out, I guess, because it's what he knows that they don't know. So there's like, okay, all right, well then, they're cooperative, they're not too belligerent. All right, I'll try to do this. This they did attempt, but they were trying to do so from their own power. So even this, all right, I'm going to leave it to the Lord. You can do this from their own power. How else would you do something? Of course it's from their own power, which was still an artifice and their own endeavor or will, as they also affirmed. So somehow, and this is a good term in here, somehow still the way that they're trying to do it is artificial. And you can definitely see the artificial nature in the original attempt to say, I'm going to think something intentionally to game the system, that I'm going to think I'm not really interested, so that because out of a desire to be interested, that's obviously a device, an artifice. But here, even to say, okay, well, I really want this, and I know only the Lord can give it, so I'm going to say I don't want it so that the Lord can give it to me, still doesn't quite check the boxes. When they asked how they should go about it, which it's confusing. Okay, I don't get what you're saying. You lost me there, Buddha. When they asked how they should go about it, they were told that they should not do anything from their own power, but act without introspection. Act without introspection. that is a little different than what I was expecting him to say. Because acting, what does it mean, your own power? Does that mean that you just sit there and wait, which we're about to get to? He's contrasting that with, and you're saying, hey, you're trying to get us to look at the word act, but you colored over it. Okay. But if you make me erase this part of this, I'm going to have to do it again. Act, but you can act without introspection, because act sounds like by your own power. So really, it's not about whether you're doing whatever we do to act. Like you go ahead, try to parse that out and boil that down. What is it even to act? If I say, I'm going to want my arm to fly up in the air in a second here, okay? I don't know exactly how I did that. You just know you kind of feel it, and there's some threshold where it happens. You're in control of it, but I don't know exactly how that works. It's very, very, the UI is very clean, so I don't even know. Like, I can imagine my arm going up. I'm imagining it going up, but I know that right now I'm actually going to do it. I don't know how that works. Somehow, the act is not what we're trying to get rid of. It's introspection. So this is more, again, about your intent than your act. So, is this an easy thing to do? But because they were unable to do this, they tried to be devoid of all effort, abandoning all willpower so as to passively await activation. They were saying, okay, fine, I won't do anything. And they're giving a great case study in how not to follow this principle. Just to say, okay, you're God, you do whatever you want to do. But when they tried to do this is a rough day for these spirits. Again, they were told it was not genuine to abandon themselves to effortlessness. So they said they could not possibly learn how to behave. For whatever they do in accordance with what has been commanded is still not genuine. Fine. You're just saying, you're just giving me this impossible task, and so I can't do it. And doesn't it feel like we're being given an impossible task here? To act without introspection, do stuff not from our own power. A lot of spiritual teachings seem like they're impossible, and it can seem like, okay, fine, that doesn't make any sense. You're just telling me to do something that isn't anything. So you're in good company. Even spirits don't get it. Is there, though? Is it? Because the danger is this just a bunch of, like, good sounding fluff? Is it just rhetoric that's supposed to sound really spiritual? Like, no, just don't have any effort. Act spontaneous, like act from God, but it's not really a thing. It's just trying to sound wise and impenetrable. Or is it something that is not morally good? Like it's telling you to just be nothing, and it's degrading your agency as an individual. What are we going to learn here? So let's see. I don't know. Let's see if we can get something that does seem like an improvement. And I think we have our first clue in its avoidance of introspection. Don't forget that. The reason is that they are not being led by the Lord, but wanting to lead themselves, and wanting to endeavor, or will, and to act from their own power. Therefore, they should know that all their effort should be the Lord's, so that nothing is theirs. So when they endeavor from their own power, it is nothing but sin, which the Lord does not support. Very religious. I think this is what I'm taking from this so far. If we go back to our priceless diagram of Lord and the Self, we've got a thing we want, right? We've got our goal here, and we want to get there, and we're finding in the spiritual sense, this is applied very easily to life, because do y'all have goals that you're having a hard time getting? Are there things in your life that you want that you don't seem to have? So here we are, we've got this goal, and we're learning, okay, you can try to get it on your own, but that doesn't work. Doesn't always work. Let's say in this case, it's not working. Okay, we're trying to get it from our own. So we're being told that the way to do it is you can't get it when you're intensely desiring it. Which right there, yeah, there's some kind of moral lesson in that. But okay, fine. So I'll pretend that I'm thinking something differently to try to get that. So I'll try to obey the laws of the system to try to get it, but it still doesn't work. Okay, fine. Then I hear it's supposed to be the Lord that's getting us there. Okay, I will say, okay, Lord, it's up to you to get me there. It's not up to me, it's up to you to get me there. What's the problem? How do we know this is really good? That this is really where we should go? The fundamental difference between wanting from self and wanting from the Lord is we're turning over executive decision making. Because all of these other efforts are still saying that I know, that I have the wisdom to know that the spiritual consequences of me getting this thing are good and that this is the right goal. What we don't open ourselves up to is there actually another goal there that is much better for us, and that there are infinitely better spiritual consequences, and this leads to things in the next year or in the next decade that we really need, that we didn't realize we need? How do we know it's there? If we're saying, okay, Lord, get me there, we're just using the Lord as a tool. So the true willing from the Lord is to, instead of saying, I want goal A, or even I want goal B, as you say, I want the Lord as the goal. What I want is to be more and more led by what you want, because you are goodness and truth, and my sense of self, like my little mind, is sometimes wanting good things, sometimes wanting not so good things. It's just not fit to steer when you're making these eternal decisions. So that's what we're trying to get to. And so how do you get to it? There's this curious thing about acting without introspection. Where is that? Wasn't that somewhere? Didn't we see that somewhere? Could be that we saw it right here. What is that? Act without introspection. And if I were to hold forth on it, I'd say it has to do with Swedenborg's model of the mind, and that we talked before about this lightness and this darkness coming in, and that really it is coming in. That our mind is susceptible to all kinds of influences, both negative and positive, from the spiritual world. And that all truth and wisdom and good of life is here in the divine. That God is trying to impart it to us. That we're not able to generate it from scratch. This is the life we have. There's one life. Life comes from God. God is the source of all that is. This is what that means. We can't just generate that out of nothing. We can receive. What you've heard, we are vessels. We can receive stuff, but we can't spontaneously create good or an orderly progression of life. This is something that God is trying to bring in. So our introspection, if our introspection is all gummed up with false precepts that we have, things that we don't understand correctly, just like if you were going to say to 3.5-year-old, okay, let's have you start mapping out your career path. They're just not equipped to do it. Similarly, we're not really equipped to make these huge decisions about what's good and true. So if the only, what would you want? Or if you're somebody, maybe a better example is you're somebody who doesn't know anything about microelectronics, if that even is a field, something really complicated with tech stuff, and you're supposed to go run this tech company, and you don't know anything about it. What you'd really want is to contract some kind of really good advisor, and who does know all this stuff, and when they tell you, do this, the best thing you can do is not pull it into your brain and sort of think about things that are way outside your purview. The best thing would be, oh yeah, I'll act on that because it's good. So the trick is, because we can't just do that with every thought that comes into our mind, but how do we focus on finding that voice of the Lord and then letting it in? The spontaneity allows us to bypass a lot of the sort of web of misinformation that has been built up in our mind by all kinds of experience in life or whatever it is. We all have it. So you can bypass that and let the Lord act through you. Okay? Let's see where this goes from here. To be guided and to live from the Lord is therefore, give us more about it, is therefore something that neither man nor spirit is aware of. So they suppose such a life is not life when yet it is the real life. It's natural to think that would be just like what all I'm doing is like letting the Lord flow through me and guide my actions, and that is, what am I, like some kind of remote control car? So it's not that we have a false picture of it, that we think that would be less alive than this sort of scrambling around and trying to do stuff that we do now. But the difference is more subtle than that. You still feel like yourself. You still are. You're actually more yourself, and you're more alive. This is not God. This is not going towards a state that is less or more artificial. It is the real life. Nobody doesn't want real life. Everybody wants real life. While one should not endeavor from one's own power, neither should one let oneself give up all effort. These are very inward matters, which are so difficult to believe because they are neither understood nor perceived. Yeah, it does sound a little Zen. It does sound a little, wait, don't endeavor from your own power, neither should one let oneself give up all effort. So don't try to do things, but don't stop trying to do things. It is all confusing. I think the key is the spontaneity. Act without introspection. You can't do this all the time, but this is where it becomes real for me. My mind tends to write stories about my life and how my life is going and how I relate to certain people and where I need to manage my trajectory and the state of the world. There's a lot of story writing going on in there, and I find those stories tend to start to spiral tighter and tighter until I'm agitated, and there's all this built up stuff. You ever had that where you've got this built up grievance with somebody, and then you find out like, oh, that wasn't at all what they were thinking of the situation, or I thought this thing was really scary, but then I uncover it's not really that scary at all. Those stories are really divorced from reality. And the more that I let myself get wrapped up in those stories, the more divorced I am from reality. But the more I say, look, I'm not right now, when those thoughts start to come in and say, don't you want to think about life this way? Don't you want to think about life that way? The more I'm saying, I don't really do that. I don't really go and build up my interpretation of reality. I actually prefer to go out and experience it and see what happens, trusting that the Lord is going to actually guide each moment, because it's the idea that it's me and life and we're the two parties here interacting is false, because it's actually the divine is running things from above. Even though I can't see it usually, but it's a major player here. It's kind of like trying to look at the solar system and like, what's the Earth doing? What's the Earth? Why is it going in this circle without acknowledging the sun? That is the way that we're able to experience life more fully without those stories and more truthfully. And God is there, always trying to give us good stuff, always trying to understanding the pain that we're in, understanding the longings that we have, understanding things that we don't even realize that we need, but we do need, and what the right next steps are and what the actual problems are. And God is constantly trying to insert the right governance for us. So by doing less of the I'm building up a fortress of my own constructs and acting always through that bureaucracy. It's removing bureaucracy. I love that. It's removing your mental bureaucracy to allow the Lord to come through in the right time. It's up to each of us in our hearts to weigh where we feel like that spontaneity is pushing us. But that could be a clue into how do you cut through all of this into something that is more good and true and real life. That's the news from heaven. How'd you like it? I hope you did. Please, man, try it out. What's it like this week trying to do some spontaneous stuff? Do you see? And I don't mean like, I'm going to go do this frivolous thing. I more mean how you're going to approach things. Whether or not you're going to worry about them. That's what I'm talking. I'm not talking about some cartoonish life where you're like, well, today I'm going to take my wallet and throw it out the window and see what happens. I more mean that rather, I'm not going to say, oh, I need to have this for this and it needs to be this way. The Lord is taking care of it. The Lord is going to meet me in each moment. Do it. Does it work? Does it help you at all? This is the only way we can know whether this story that we're hearing is really something that's real, independent of whether it was ever written by Swedenborg or not. Go test it out. Let me know how it is. Leave it in the comments, whatever you want to do. That's really great. So looking forward to, hopefully that gives you something good. And if it does, think about how you could support the next person finding something good like that, because we are a nonprofit and we need your financial support to make this programming happen. This is a little message I want to give you about that. You may not know that we depend on donor support to create our programming, to share the insights and ideas contained in the writings of Emanuel Swedenborg. How do you think there's a show with where we can draw on a draw pad about this weird spiritual stuff. It took people donating. Well, we do. And we wanted to share an opportunity to support our recently established endowment fund for Off the Left Eye if you want this work to continue. This fund provides us with the ability to offset the costs of production and staffing. Consider your ability to make a gift and visit otle.causevox.com, become part of our community of donors and really community of the people, the engine. Here's a little drawing of an engine. There's a little carburetor and a something that makes Off the Left Eye go. This is a message from Tim, our director of development. Email him if you have any questions. He's a great guy. And this community of donors, I mean it. Thank you to everyone who's made this possible. Consider becoming one yourself. Thanks for watching, everybody. I was having this moment during the show of just when we were just digging into the weeds of these obscure Swedenborgian concepts, I felt this gratitude that there's anybody who wants to go through this with me and this to get to dive into that and pull out what I think are these overlooked, really important tools for life. So thank you from me to you for being here and watching and keeping this thing going with your interest. Hopefully you feel like you're getting your time's worth spent here. I'll talk to you soon.